So good morning. Is working? You can hear me? Yes? Okay, great. Good morning. Karen and I are very, very happy to be here with you and to share not only what we are thinking about action learning, but also to help you to take some small activities to learn a little bit about it. So we believe that you cannot learn about action learning only by hearing about it. So I hope you will join us as we move through the morning to share some activities, to try it out a little bit. In my country, we say that you can rent the process. You don't have to buy it. So to try it out, see how it feels. It may not feel so comfortable because it's not something maybe you are used to, but the only way to learn about action learning is by doing action learning. So we are going to share with you some information about action learning, and then we are going to help you to try it out. Rent the process. So to start, I'm going to ask you to just do a little breathing activity, because oftentimes for learning, we get very anxious, and we know now from neuroscience that the anxious part of our brain makes it very difficult to concentrate. And so I'm going to ask you to just kind of take a moment and maybe close your eyes a little, get grounded, and just take a few deep breaths to see if you can get centered in this place. And I'm going to ask you to think about a few things just to make the transition from where you've been so far to where we are now. So we do this often at Teachers College. We are trying to use neuroscience, what we learn from neuroscience, in our practice of helping people learn. And neuroscience says that most of the time, adults are very anxious when they come in situations where everything is new, which is particularly important in this field of intercultural, cross-cultural, multicultural, and inclusion education. Because, as you know, when we're working across cultures, we are always working with difference. And the different person, we are different, they are different, makes us anxious. So we'll practice just a little relaxation here. So if you'll close your eyes and just take some deep breaths. So get comfortable and feel in your body. So if you just relax and close your eyes, if you're sitting, you can just get comfortable and see if you have any tension in your shoulders, for example. My shoulders often get like this, up, anxious. So just relax and breathe, take a few deep breaths. And as you're relaxing, think about all the things in your very busy days that you're just putting aside for the moment. And see if you can get in touch with the curious side of your brain. Think about something you really are interested in learning from this morning. Maybe what you're really interested in learning is, can I follow this lecture in English? So maybe it's to listen for understanding, or maybe it's something else. But see if you can open up the side of your brain that is less about all those busy things you're doing in your life, and just something you're curious about doing this morning. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come to the present. So this is especially difficult to do in these days because mostly we're busy, running. And what happens when we're that busy and we need to do something? Our brain tells us what we should do from the past, our habit, right? So we all have habits. Some of those habits are good, some of those habits are bad. But if we don't have time to stop and breathe and think, we do the habit rather than the learning. So this is very relevant to action learning because action learning is based on how do we learn from our experience, and how do we do that in a way that is not relying only on the habit from the past. It's really about breaking habits and opening up our minds to new thinking. So if we all have an experience, just like this drop of water, so there's a drop of water and there are many ripples. And so every experience has many rings of ripples. And each one of us may be making different meaning or different sense of that experience. And as we're going to talk with you, and Karen will say a little bit more about this in a moment, what happens is that what is expected of us is what we do, because we don't have time to break the routine. So we do not only what we have as habit, but also what the organization, what the institution, what the profession says we should do, even if stopping and thinking might make us question whether that's the right thing to do. So that is what Karen and I started to think about when we started this journey on how do people learn outside of the classroom. Because we realized that this kind of education is very important. It prepares you. It helps you think in advance. What am I going to face? What are the typical responses? How can I solve this? What do people know? But at the same time, we also know that when you start your jobs, nothing will be the same as it is in the classroom. Everything will be different in some way. So we didn't start our journey saying, oh, we want to do action learning. We didn't even think about action learning at the time we started our journey. But we asked the question of, how do people learn? What prompts them to learn in circumstances that are on the job when they need to learn to do things differently? So they may be facing a challenge. The circumstances of how you were helped to understand how to do multicultural education, they're not the same as they were in all the case studies you studied. So something is different, and you want to help, but you don't know where to start. And so what should we think about in terms of informal learning to help people learn better on the job? So we thought, well, first of all, it starts with the meaning that you make. So we know also now, especially reinforced through neuroscience, that each one of us makes sense of our experience based on our individual life histories, our past personal experiences. So in terms of your future work with multicultural or intercultural activity, when you meet someone from another culture, when Loretta and I meet, Loretta is trying to understand, what is she saying? Not only the English, but what does she mean? And I'm thinking, oh, Loretta, I need to understand what Loretta means. So we're all taking it in, but we filter it through our past experience. So oftentimes we found that in order to make meaning, we had to disrupt or change the meaning we thought we had of what the other person is thinking or saying. So I might think, oh, I know Loretta is in this position in the university, she's the head of the Transformative Learning Network, she's this. And so I may be thinking that she makes sense, she's telling me something that she's not telling me. So I have to disrupt my old ideas in order to take in an open way, the new ideas. So one more piece, it's really about disruption in order to make more complete whole learning. So if I meet with someone in the hospital system who is from another culture, I have a limited meaning about what they're going through. They are perhaps a patient in the hospital, and they are from another culture or country, then I'm thinking that they would react in the same way I would. I don't have a complete meaning. And so informal and incidental learning, the way Karen and I practice it, which led us to action learning, is about how do we add more perspectives? How do we add other people's point of view so we have a really complete and clear understanding of the situation? So action learning is based on this idea of learning from experience, and all of you must know our John Dewey. If you come into Teachers College, there's a statue of John Dewey, and we all come in and we bow in the morning. So John Dewey also said that we have habits, and we have to disrupt the habits of the way we make meaning by using active reflection. And that is at the heart of action learning, the way we practice it. So we need to not just have experience after experience after experience, the same experience, but by reflection, we can disrupt, we can get more meaning, we can make more sense, we can try out new things to address a bigger picture of the problem. So this idea of reflection, both mindfulness practice, stopping, reflecting, is very central, and it often doesn't feel natural to us. And moreover, in addition, for professionals, like all of us in the room, professionals are supposed to stop and reflect and think, but the way we live our lives and the way we do our work, it prevents us from doing that. We call it a competence trap. We have to be perfect, we have to be right, which means we don't stop, we don't ask questions, we don't think with people. So it's a real challenge. So we say in action learning, what you will experience, you have to slow down to go fast. So, Karen.
So I might need this. Buongiorno. It's good to be here today. So I want to talk about a little bit more about the nature of action learning. What is this thing? And we talk about it as really trying to work in systems that themselves are layered, hierarchical. There's people are embedded in that system, so we get caught up in the politics of it. Yes, very complex and interacting systems. How do we work in that context and use it to make meaningful learning? So, what is action learning? One definition that we like is that action learning is really doing real work in organizations in groups. So unpacking that, it's about taking a real problem, something that is a significant challenge to me or my organization, and using the many perspectives of people in a group in order to try to meet that challenge and understand it. And we do that by working in sort of repeating these cycles, and they're iterative in the sense that they repeat the process, but at different levels. So each time I go through the cycle, I've learned more, and so it's additive. I'm constantly doing it. So the steps are these. We begin by trying to interpret the challenge. We don't assume that we all share an understanding. So I might, whatever the words are, as Victoria said, there are different ways that we make meaning. And so we begin by sharing our different interpretations so that we can see many ways of thinking about the problem. So then I have to think about the fact that each of us has a different frame on the problem. So if I'm a sociologist, I might think that the problem is in the system. The system made people behave, right? So it's the sociological solution. If it's psychological, I say, well, look inside the person. What is going on inside this individual? So I have a different way of framing the problem. So let me give you an example. Have you ever gone out to your car and tried to start it? You turn the key and nothing happens? What do you do? Yeah, your bike. Yeah. You turn the key. You turn the key again. Yes? Anybody else? What do you do? Other ideas? What do you do? Huh? What? I didn't hear. What?
No, a student is saying, I will call my father.
Oh, yeah. Call an expert, right? That's a good thing. Anything else you might try?
Ask you to recharge the
Yes, ask for help. Collaborate. That's right. Okay, so think about, I might turn the key again, right? Most people do try to turn the key again. And on the one hand, I could be framing the problem as disbelief, right? This can't be happening. But on the other, I might also have an electrical frame on the problem. If I turn the key a certain way, it will engage the electrical system, right? If I call my father, right, I'm thinking this is a problem that needs an expert, right? I need an expert solution. So you see, the way we think about the problem dictates what we do next. So if I have this group thinking about this challenge together, then I can select alternatives from many points of view, from many frames of mind. So when I have a choice, I can take an action and I can experiment. I can try something, try a mini experiment of something, right? And so that action leads to consequences that I can also learn from. So I try I try to turn the key, nothing happens again. I have gotten feedback, and I now have to make another action. So from what I have learned through that assessment, I now have to rethink the challenge. And actually, what's interesting in action learning, most of the time we learn that the way we defined the problem was not the real problem at all. What that means for us, I think, in using this tool is that we prevent people from spending a lot of time solving the wrong problem. So there are three key elements of action learning to think about. One is it depends upon strong reflection on the problem, and then experimentation, trying many things out, and then getting the feedback of how that worked, as well as the feedback we get from the group of many perspectives focusing on one key challenge. The father of action learning was Reg Revens from England, and Revens said that learning, it consists of learning from the past or the programmed wisdom, sometimes the habits, but also the historical ways of doing things. But the second form of learning, and the one that we focus most on in action learning, is learning from questioning, the insights that we get by questioning things as they are. And at the same time, what is happening in action learning is that there are 4 types of learning going on at the same time, and that's what makes it so, I think, powerful. I'm acquiring new knowledge. I'm learning from the experience of working on the problem and working together. I am solving complex problems collectively, so I'm learning a new solution perhaps, possibly many solutions to an issue. And I'm learning through the group work itself, learning about being in a group and solving problems collaboratively. He also said that if we want to survive in our organizations today, learning has to be greater than or at least equal to the speed of change. And I think that's and what action learning allows us to do, that whole notion of going slow to go fast, it allows us to accelerate learning because we're not spending time on the wrong problem. We're actually we're deeply digging into what is the real problem so that we're solving that, or at least finding a solution among many. So learning becomes faster. You're working hard, Francesca.
Not really. Now also the way of speaking is great.
Thank you. So when do we use action learning? Action learning that's slowing down to stop and reflect, is best used when things are unknown, when we don't really have a known solution. There is no programmed wisdom from the past that we can draw on. And it particularly is useful, we think, in trying to help people integrate learning with work. So we don't go to school, we work within the actual context and solve important real problems. So we haven't stopped work, we've continued work, but we've learned through the work. And we do that especially when group work comes into play. It is also extremely useful when an organization is trying to change the culture, much of the work that Victoria and I have done has been looking at how you create learning cultures in organizations. And action learning is a powerful, powerful tool to enable you to do that. So we like to learn by doing. So we'd like you to take a few minutes to think about a problem or challenge that doesn't have a known solution in your own experience. And I want you to just sort of write down what that problem is. Why is it important to you? What have you done to try to address it? Then we're going to work with the person sitting next to you in dyad, in pairs, to discuss each problem or challenge. And then we'll debrief, we'll ask you some questions about that experience. So take a couple of minutes to think about a challenge, and then we'll give you about 5 minutes to discuss it in groups.
So just to give you a few ideas, when we do this with our students, for the most part, there are two types of problems that they have no easy answer for. One is, what am I going to do when I graduate? What kind of job do I really want to do? Or if you're already working, how can I take care of that problem at the office? You know, that political problem for which there's no easy answer. So, but the even more popular one is, how can I get a girlfriend or boyfriend that I really, really want?
So where we go from here is a practice where we take the problem you began with and we ask you to hang in it a little bit longer and ask questions and really challenge your assumptions about the problem so that we can see what is the problem behind the problem. And that's the real work of action learning. We think it's incredibly important to, and actually there's joy in it, to be able to continue to reflect and think about the problem much more deeply than you've had a chance to do thus far. So the process begins with the challenge, but it doesn't end there. It moves through many cycles of, you know, what is the problem really? What is the problem again and again until we get to where we need to be to figure out what's really behind the problem we think we're having.
So we could actually work with you for days with this if you'd like to, but we don't have days. But the good news is that there are some people in this room who know how to do this work. And maybe you can persuade some of those people who are standing by the window over there to do some action learning conversation work with you. Because it does, as Karen said, it adds, it's a very excellent start to do what you did, and these problems that you have shared are really the right kind of a challenge for action learning. And to open it up, there are some tools around how to ask different kinds of questions, an open-ended questioning process, and also a way of looking beneath the surface at, so what does this really mean? What am I assuming? What assumptions do I make that maybe lead me, for example, to think the best solution is X when I don't see other solutions? So in action learning conversations, you are able to get deeper and then maybe change how you're looking at the challenge. So sometimes, for example, maybe it's, maybe what I should be doing is looking at what my fear is rather than what my parents' fear is. If I'm making an assumption here, which is probably not accurate. But for living at home, for example, and the difficulties around that, maybe some of the problem is my own fear about moving out. Possibly not. But we can look at a number of different situations around that. So I hope that maybe that would be a possibility, because it opens up some new way of thinking about the situation, and the light goes on, the light bulb goes on, and you are able to see some new ideas as a result. So it sounds to us like you did a great job. And that you demonstrated how natural and easy it is to take time out and to go beneath the surface and to open up new thinking. And the solutions, the questions that you raise sound like very good questions. The reframing of what might you think about sounds like very good, productive ways, to move forward. So we think that the process of having some group feedback, thinking together, and experimentation and reflection seems like it worked. And we hope that you would use this further in your own personal situations. But there's another benefit of processes like these, and that is that it helps you, when you do start your regular jobs, to be better at the kind of collaborative problem framing and problem solving that we need in workplaces. Because if we don't change how we're doing things, if we don't change systems, we are going to be more and more behind, and things are going to get worse and worse. So we need fresh thinking, and we don't get fresh thinking unless we have new questions, stepping back and thinking in new ways. So I think you did a great job. Karen?
So you. So I also would say you did a great job. And what's fun about action learning is that we peel the onion again and again, another layer. And so we could do this process again, and what felt like a good solution might not be the solution you end up with. So we do cycles again and again. And wasn't it great to have the facilitation of our good friends who did a great job helping? So a facilitator can help us keep that process moving so that we can, in fact, get to something deeper. With multiple cycles, we get that creativity. You get past the things that we immediately think about. Whatever our current reality is, our current solutions are what we come up with first. It's the going back into it again. So come back to this conversation another time. Try it again, and who knows, you'll arrive somewhere you haven't ever been before. Thank you so much for having us here. It's been great.